So you're sitting in an intersection and bam, a vehicle strikes a pedestrian. Not a good situation, obviously. Not good for anybody involved. But it's a serious situation, especially because these often result in injuries or even death. So if you are in this situation, you need some answers, and we're going to talk about that right now. Hi, I'm attorney Derek Martin. Our law firm is Driver Defense Team. Our firm focuses on traffic tickets and other driving-related issues here in the Chicagoland area. Handle thousands of tickets, have over 1,000 five-star reviews on Google, so we know what we're talking about when it comes to this type of stuff. What we're talking about today is obviously a bad situation. A vehicle versus a pedestrian. Maybe, hopefully, the person walks away with a bump or a scratch, but oftentimes it does result in serious injuries and even a fatality. So the first thing I want you to understand when it comes to this is the type of ticket. Because there can be many types of tickets when this thing happens. And that's because the actual act of striking a pedestrian is not really the issue here. That's a result of a traffic violation that occurred or alleged to have occurred. Let me explain what I mean. So, if a vehicle swerves out of their lane and hits a pedestrian, well, it's the swerving out of the lane that is the traffic violation that you'd be ticketed with. And the result of that was striking a pedestrian. If you come into a crosswalk, right, and hit a pedestrian, well, it's the fact that the vehicle went into the crosswalk that is the traffic violation. Hitting the pedestrian is certainly an element of it, but there's a traffic violation that preceded that, and that's what you'd get ticketed with. It's an important concept to understand because there is no one ticket simply for hitting a pedestrian. There can be multiple. And one of the most common ones that we see is failure to reduce speed to avoid an accident. It's a mouthful, but if you break it down, it makes sense. It's failing to reduce or slow down your speed. Now, that doesn't mean that you were speeding. You can be going under the speed limit and receive this ticket. And as a result of failing to slow down or reduce your speed, it resulted in an accident. That could be an accident with another vehicle, property like a light pole or something, or it could be a pedestrian. Now, if this occurs in a crosswalk, then there's a specific ticket for this, and that's failing to yield to a pedestrian in a crosswalk. So again, same thing, you get it. You failed to yield or stop or slow down. You entered into the crosswalk and you made contact with the pedestrian. Another one that we see, especially in the city of Chicago when this happens, is negligent driving. I'm gonna give you an example. We have a client who was sitting at a stop sign and proceeds, looks both ways like you're supposed to do and goes. Well, they claim that it happened to be somebody on a bicycle, came out right in front of them, they made contact. Thankfully, everybody's okay, but the allegation is that this driver could have avoided that. They committed a traffic violation by not using care or caution. So they were ticketed with negligent driving. Let me read you the Chicago's definition of negligent driving. It says that it's unlawful to operate a vehicle negligently or heedlessly or without due caution in a manner which endangers or is likely to endanger a person or property. So they're kind of using the definition of negligent in the law, right, of negligent driving. So it can be a bit vague, right, a bit sort of a catch-all citation. Now, that is something sometimes we can use to attack in court, but this is almost always gonna result in a traffic ticket, probably one of these. You're just not gonna be in a vehicle, hit a pedestrian, and be likely to not get ticketed. I mean, the officer shows up after the fact. They've got an injured person here, probably. They've got a driver. They're gonna give a ticket, and it's probably gonna be one of these. Everything that I've talked about so far is just a regular traffic ticket, what we call a petty offense. Meaning, yes, it can go on your driving record, and yes, there can be some fines in classes, but it's not a criminal offense, right? It's simply, even when there's a serious injury or fatality, it's often not a criminal offense, it's a traffic offense. However, when there are those serious injuries or death, there can be some extra penalties. We're going to talk about those in a minute. But first, I want to make a distinction between everything we've talked about so far and how this situation can become far, far worse. What I'm talking about here is leaving the scene of an accident. We have many cases like this as well, where it may start off fairly innocently enough, where maybe a small violation occurred, there was an accident, but the driver either unknowingly or knowingly leaves the scene of the accident. Now, obviously, you're compounding things. You're making something that was maybe just a traffic violation become something far more serious, especially if there is injuries or death that result from this. This can be a felony offense with real prison time involved. So I just want to take a note here to talk about how what can be maybe a relatively minor situation gets worse. All right, back to these petty offenses and the penalties that can be involved. In court, like I said, you may have a fine, you may have a traffic class to do, and you can be done with this. However, the outcome of every traffic ticket is going to get reported back to the Secretary of State. The Illinois Secretary of State is going to or can take action based on that outcome. So if you're convicted of one of these tickets that results in serious injury or death, the Secretary of State has the discretion to suspend or revoke your driver's license. Let me just read that to you real quick. They say that the unlawful operation of a motor vehicle, and let me pause there, the unlawful operation of a motor vehicle is proven by the fact that you were found guilty or pled guilty. So the Secretary of State doesn't have to prove that. That already happened in court, and it's just being reported to them. So because there is clearly now unlawful operation of a motor vehicle, and that contributed or caused an accident that resulted in an injury, and that injury required immediate professional treatment in a hospital or doctor's office, then they can suspend or, in the case of a fatality, revoke. In other words, take away your driver's license. So that is a hidden penalty to this. It's not something that's addressed in court, but only occurs after the fact once the Secretary of State finds out about it. Now, unfortunately, you may not know that, or unfortunately, your lawyer may not even know that. The judge, the prosecutors may not be aware of the actions that happen or the things that are triggered by the Secretary of State as a result of a conviction. So you obviously want to retain a lawyer who knows what the heck they're doing, especially if there was serious injury or fatality involved. You want a lawyer who handles accidents daily. You want someone whose practice is built around doing that, because not only are those fines and fees at risk, but more importantly, your driver's license. Final thing to note is that if someone is seriously injured or God forbid, killed, then you can bet that there's going to be some sort of lawsuit. Now that's a separate issue, and that's why you hopefully had insurance so they can deal with that on your behalf. But the outcome of this ticket can really matter when it comes to a resulting lawsuit. So again, the name of the game here is you want an attorney representing you who's dealt with this before and knows what they're doing. So if you have questions or want to talk about that, please let our law firm know. We're happy to discuss it with you. Otherwise, I hope you learned a thing or two about how serious it can be when a vehicle strikes a pedestrian. Thanks for watching.